out of the ordinary insights. Brought to you by Mustaq Specialist Bank.
Welcome to Captains of Industry. I'm Lindsay Williams, and with me this week is Mustaq Brey, who's the CEO of JSE-listed Brimstone. Mustaq, I've always been fascinated by your company because you go about your business in a very sort of quiet way, but your returns are outstanding.
Well, Lindsay, thanks very much. That's just the way we like doing business at Brimstone. We like being under the radar. We don't want to be putting our names up in neon lights that we can't deliver for our shareholders.
Yes, indeed. Is that an intentional sort of policy?
It's intentional, yeah. We got so many detractors normally in business, especially in the BEE sector, where people, when they're starting to do well, others are saying why they're doing well. So we just want to be below the radar, just carry on doing the work for our shareholders. Our shareholders have been very loyal with us over the last 17 years, and it's our duty to work hard for them.
Let's go back 17 years if we can now and get to the origins of Brimstone. How did it start? What was the vision?
In 1994 we were invited to, there was a conference in America, investing in Africa. Thabo Mbeki was Vice President, Deputy President at that time of South Africa. He was the leader of the South African delegation. We went there, Fred and myself were there, and we saw what was happening in Johannesburg. NAIL was being started, New Africa Investments, Real Africa Investments. And we said, look, there's a gap in Cape Town. There's nothing happening in Cape Town. So why don't we start something when we get back? And that was really the first thoughts we had of starting Brimstone. And then when we came back, we were involved in the Oceana transaction. In actual fact, the way Fred and I got involved with that was we were representing the fishing desk, the ANC fishing desk, working for the unions. The West Coast Fisher Union was a client of mine. And there was a major dispute going on at that time. And that's where we got in contact with the Oceana people. And then when they did the empowerment transaction a year later, we were at the table. We couldn't raise the money. Real Africa then took the transaction. We went back and complained, and they said, okay, we'll give you a small slug of the transaction, 7.5 million rands worth. At that stage, Oceana was trading at R2.50 or R2.60 a share. We did that, we battled. They came back and said, look, Standard Bank will help you. If you can raise 3 million rand in 6 weeks from shareholder funds, Standard Bank will give you a loan of 4.5 million. And that was the start of Brimstone.
Very good.
We then went door to door to my clients and Fred to his clients in the insurance game, and we raised the 3 million rand, and that was the seed capital.
So people were sceptical in those days about loaning money for such ventures, I presume.
Yeah, no, it was completely very early days. We went and we broke down the thing, and we said afterwards, in the next round, after we raised the initial money of the 3 million rand, we said now we need to go raise more money to go buy more other assets. And people couldn't give us a check of 6,250. That was to buy 5,000 shares of R1.25 each. We then devised a scheme. We said, okay, why don't you buy, we then created a linked unit, which is now quite common in the property sector. We created a linked unit to say buy one share at 1,250 rand and 4 debentures at 1,250, and you can pay it off over 5 months. And people could give you 5 checks of 1,250 rand each. However, they couldn't give you one check of 6,250. And after you paid the last installment, it all convert back to shares. And that's how we started up Brimstone.
Go back to 1994 again, when you went to the United States with the government delegation. What was the mood then in the United States of America towards Africa and towards South Africa?
No, it was very strong. It was euphoria. Everybody wanted to do business in South Africa. I think a lot of the black South Africans who went as well met the wrong people as well. I mean, there were a lot of agents out there who were just trying to think, look, this is a new area where they could come and make money. We were all babes in the wood. I mean, look, we were youngsters. We didn't know what was going on. We then learned some of our guys would take the American guys out for drinks, and all those guys, you were paying their drinks in dollars. I mean, so it wasn't very, very profitable.
So there was euphoria around the democracy, the new democracy in South Africa. Yeah. And of course, if you look to 19 years hence, it's sort of turned around a bit. The rest of Africa, which was the subject of Afro-pessimism in 1994, for example, and South Africa was the poster boy of the international community. Suddenly it's changed a bit. Are you saddened by that?
I'm very saddened by that, in actual fact, yeah. I don't think we've done black economic empowerment correctly. I don't think we've really ingrained it like we've done it at Brimstone. We said the only way, you can't want to just do BEE to tick a box. That's wrong. And that's what's happening in South Africa. I think from whatever you do, there's got to be stuff coming from the top that, look, black economic empowerment is going to be part of the change of the economic constituency of South Africa. where it was pre-1994 to after that. We had no bloodshed. If you look at Europe now as well, look at Egypt a few years ago, look at Syria, what's happening at the moment, Turkey as well. There's been so much bloodshed all over the world for democracy. We had a peaceful changeover, right? And there should have been an economic price to pay for that. And I don't think corporate South Africa has paid that price correctly.
We haven't really built on the success of the changeover, have we? In fact, we've almost rested on our laurels and become too sanguine about our history, and we haven't progressed, whereas other countries are progressing. Apart from your fantastic returns for your shareholders, you're also known for your progressive BEE policy, and your BEE credentials are impeccable. How did it start? How did you approach it?
We've always said, look, we in actual we're on the wrong side of the line at one stage as well. And then in around about 2002, we had an opportunity of buying out a big institutional shareholder. And we then sold off one of our assets, right? And when we did that, we bought back the shares, and Brimstone became black controlled at an economic level. And we said, that's now going to be our target. We're not going to change that. We've since then signed 4 or 5 agreements with people like Nedbank, Old Mutual, Tiger, Oceana as well, that we will not go under 50% black shareholding. That's a stated objective. In terms of our agreements with them, if we do go under 50%, we've got a cure period of 6 months to fix it up. During that time as well, we've gone specifically and placed shares, got permission from other shareholders to go place shares with black shareholders only. So it's been a specific targeted effort to stay in black hands.
So this is a Brimstone target,
Absolutely.
Not a target that's prescribed by the authorities.
Absolutely. That's why I'm saying there should be more companies who adopt that stance and say, look here, we want to be black. We want to make a change to the demographics of this country from an economic point of view.
You've done that from a social perspective as well, but also, has it helped you in business to have this very progressive BE stance?
I don't think it has helped us that much, right? But it's still the right thing to do. You've got to keep on coming back and saying, what is the right thing to do for the future of this country? What we've done on the broad-based side, I can tell you that, we've created a trust called BEST, that's a Brimstone Empowerment Share Trust. We've got independent trustees. Up till today, we've given away more than 1 million Brimstone shares to more than 20 NGOs in this country. Every one of them got many, many thousands of beneficiaries. And what we do it for 5 years, they're not allowed to sell those shares. Thereafter, so they get the dividend from day one, it's fully paid up, transferred into their names, they get a dividend every year, and we've paid dividends consecutively now for 11 years. After 5 years, they can sell 20% per annum. And so far, nobody has sold shares. They quite like the return.
When you go back to BE again, I don't want to harp on this too much, but it's a fascinating story. In the early days, it was a bolt-on thing. People said, right, you have to be black economically empowered. You have to do that, otherwise you can't carry on doing business in South Africa. So people did it, and they had these deals that were sort of off the shelf. Do you think now that it's becoming more of a natural process, like a Brimstone approach, where people actually want to be BE compliant, but in a, as I say, in a more natural way?
Look, I think there has been movement, but I don't think there's been sufficient movement. In my mind, there could have been more done. And in actual fact, what my feeling is that there should be more done with the staff of big companies and in the areas in which they operate. If you, for instance, take the fact that we big investors on the West Coast, we got shares in Oceana and Sea Harvest. We need to get involved more with those communities on the South Coast, on the West Coast. And I think that's the way we're going to try and change the BE policy and then the BE actual benefits right down to those people in those areas where we're making our money.
We are going to talk after the break about the companies you're invested in and your investment philosophy and how difficult it is to find value out there. And I presume it is quite difficult at the moment with the shares at such elevated levels. Yeah. But let's go to you now. You're the captain of industry. What's your background?
I'm a chartered accountant. Battled to get articles in the early 70s. There weren't black accountants around. I did my matric in 1971. Couldn't go to UCT, I couldn't get a permit, I was accepted there to do business science. Couldn't go to UWC, that was for coloureds only, I was classified Indian. I then had to go study through UNISA. I've never been to full-time university. I did my university studies and I did my articles at the same time. Qualified in 1978, stayed on there, became one of the first black practitioners to be admitted into a white partnership in 1980. It was down the road from here in Claremont. We needed permission, by the way, at that time because this was a white group area and they had a coloured partner or an Indian partner. We needed permission from the Department of Community Development. That's how absurd it was at that stage. In 1985, decided to go and set up my own practice in Belgravia Road, Athlone. That developed into one of the biggest accounting practices black practices in the country.
Servicing the black community.
Primarily, yeah, and we were called the struggle accountants. We used to do most of the NGOs. They were all clients of mine, including the UDF at that stage.
And from there?
From there, in 1994, 1995, we started Brimstone on the side while I was in the accounting practice. And in 1996, we decided, look, if we want to make Brimstone work, I went to Fred one day and said, Fred, you can't run your insurance brokerage and I run my accounting practice, and Brimstone is going to happen. And we decided that at the end of that month, we will leave and we will set up Brimstone on a full-time basis. In the meantime, we had employed one person. We had employed Nisar Pangarkar. He used joined us. He used to sit in one of my offices at Gatesville. We had a 3x3 office, and he had a big laptop and a big machine which I had to carry weekends to take it home and bring it back on a Monday. We didn't have proper machinery in that. And for his pay in actual, he had to go to 3 bosses. It was Rashid Syria, Fred Robertson and myself. And we used to pay him in 3 checks. And the money we paid him afterwards we converted back into equity. So it's been quite a nice story in actual fact that, over the years and that's where we got Brimstone going.
I like the story of 1980 when you were employed by a white firm. That was also very progressive of them.
Absolutely, absolutely. The sad part was, I battled to get articles. I went to the one firm for interviews and they said, look, my dad went with me, my late dad went with me. He said, look, employ the youngster, please. He needs to get a job to serve articles. Don't pay him for the first year. He's going to live with me at home. He doesn't need money. I'll give him bus fare and train fare to get to work. And they didn't want to employ me for nothing. And now we complain there aren't enough black chartered accountants in this country. We're paying the price for what happened in this country pre-1990s.
I wonder if the youngsters of today who have grown up, who are going to matriculating now, they've never known apartheid. I wonder if they realise exactly what went on, and I wonder if it's being taught enough. Should it be taught enough in schools?
I think it should be taught to the people so that it never ever happens again. And that's the big reason why we should be telling these stories over and over again and educating our youngsters. My youngest son in actual fact, he's 20 today. He was born in 1993. He doesn't know about any of these things. He went to Rondebosch Boys, right? He's at university and I had absolutely no problem. But I tell him that I couldn't get into UCT. He said, what are you talking about? Didn't have good enough marks.